Have you ever wondered why the EU4 nation Burgundy has an event that allows it to be inherited by its powerful neighbours, which potentially can lead to its complete collapse? I did too, and so in this video, you're going to find out exactly what happened to Burgundy and why it collapses with a succession crisis in EU4. But before we begin, did you know 70% of you aren't subscribed? So if you love history content and EU4, why not consider subscribing? To understand why Burgundy became so powerful and separate from France, we begin by going back to 1363, when a French king, John II, granted his youngest son, Philip the Bold, the Duchy of Burgundy. This, however, as you'll soon find out, will become a massive regret for France. Philip was a competent individual, and became known as the Bold, for his bravery in a battle against the English. Although he was captured by the English, his imprisonment was not unpleasant, and he was able to learn falconry and play chess with the Black Prince. In 1369, Philip managed to secure a beneficial marriage with the heiress of Flanders, Margaret. When Margaret's father died, Philip was then able to inherit Flanders. At the beginning of his reign, he was completely loyal to the French throne. However, as his territories expanded, Philip viewed Burgundy as a separate entity to France. When his nephew Charles the Mad took the throne in 1380, Philip the Bold was virtually the ruler of France, along with his brothers, due to the French king's inability to govern. The Burgundian duke took advantage of his place in society and used the French treasury for his own personal spending until his death in 1404. John the Fearless then inherited the dukedom of Burgundy, and similar to his father, he continued to try and maintain power within the French court. He murdered his greatest rival in the French court, Louis of Orleans, in the streets of Paris in 1407. This started a French civil war between Burgundy and the Armagnac dynasty. John spent most of his time in the French court, and with the death of his rival, he was effectively the head of France until 1430, when the rival dynasty took Paris back. John then remained neutral in the conflict against the English, and avoided fighting the Battle of Agincourt, which was a heavy defeat for France. He took Paris back in 1418. However, John wanted to make peace with the Armagnac dynasty and end the civil war, so in 1419 a meeting was set up between the two rival dynasties. The French heir and John the Fearless met on a bridge, but then the French heir murdered John, seeing him as a traitor to France. John's son Philip the Good then inherited the Duchy of Burgundy. After the assassination of his father, Philip no longer wanted to entangle himself in French affairs, in contrast to his predecessors. Philip then focused on his own Burgundian territories, and gained an alliance in 1420 with the English. Throughout his reign, Philip was an aggressive opportunist, centralising his power and expanding his territories, making them powerful and wealthy. He is seen as one of the most important Burgundian dukes, and the true founder of the Burgundian state. Despite having a large amount of rebellions with his subjects, Philip was able to put these rebellions down, and in EU4 he is one of the best starting rulers. By the end of his reign, he was well known throughout Europe, and eventually died in 1467. His son Charles the Bold then became duke, and Charles had a vision of turning his collection of princely states into a kingdom that could both rival France and the Holy Roman Empire. He was initially successful in expanding his territories, and it looks like the Duke would continue to be successful. However, things took a turn for the worse in 1474, and this was the start of the downfall for Burgundy. Charles's aggressive expansionist policy and obsession in trying to become a king worried the Swiss Confederacy. Eventually, in 1474, the Swiss started the Begundane Wars. 3 major battles occurred that led to the complete destruction of the Burgundian duke's dream to have a kingdom. The first was the Battle of Grandson in 1476, followed by the equally damaging Battle of Murat. The final blow to Charles the Bold was at the Battle of Nancy. At the battle, Charles was heavily outnumbered, and the once proud Burgundian army was melting away as the battle commenced. Charles tried to rally his troops, but it was in vain, and a Swiss soldier dealt a blow to his head, killing the Burgundian duke. The death of Charles the Bold was a massive blow to Burgundy, and triggered a succession crisis, since Charles had no male heirs. A succession war over Burgundy between the French and the Holy Roman Emperor then took place. Charles the Bold's daughter Mary inherited the duchy, but she was weak and granted privileges to her subjects. She eventually married the HRE Emperor and signed away any chances of Burgundy becoming a thriving kingdom. 5 years later, in 1482, Mary died when a horse licked her. The Treaty of Arras was then signed between the Valois and Habsburg dynasty, and Burgundy was then divided up between the two parties. It's crazy to think that the Burgundian dukes went from one of the most powerful forces within Europe to completely collapsing in such a short amount of time. In EU4, paradox have changed the way in which the Burgundian succession crisis can unfold, which can either be really beneficial for a Burgundian player, or end in complete disaster with you losing a large amount of territories. There is a chance, however, that the event may not happen if Charles the Bold gains a male heir in the game, but paradox have reduced the likelihood of Charles the Bold gaining a male heir. If you want to know how to trigger the succession crisis, there is a link in the description.